Perfect. Yeah, let's go ahead and get started. So good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us and welcome to the second mini medical school of 2021. This is the second thing in the series, so we're so excited to have you. I'm Natalie Cox and I'm a first-year medical student at IU School of Medicine, and I will be co-moderating the session tonight.
Hi everyone, I'm Brett. I will also be a co-moderator along with Natalie. I'm also a first-year medical student at IU. If you've attended the mini medical school series in the past, you'll know that with many things this year, it looks a little bit different, but we're very excited to have you with us here today. And we're excited to share the speaker with you.
Before we go ahead and introduce our panelists, we'd like to take a moment and thank our sponsors who have made the 26th annual medical school series possible. So a big thank you to the Hamilton Center, Indiana State University, Indiana University School of Medicine Terre Haute, the Minority Health Coalition of Vigo County, Terre Haute Regional Hospital, Tribune Star, Union Health, Vi Media, West Central Indiana AHEC, WTHI TV, and the Lugar Center for Rural Health.
And before Natalie introduces the panelist for tonight, I'm gonna just kind of explain what's gonna go on. So our panelist is going to give a wonderful presentation, and throughout the presentation, the audience is going to be muted, but we encourage people in attendance to submit questions in the Q&A tab. You should be able to find that in the bottom of your screen. In Zoom, it should be in between participants and chat. So please send us in all your questions that you're having, and our panelist will answer them after she gives her presentation. Tonight's topic will focus on mental health strategies to cope during the COVID-19 pandemic. And without further ado, Natalie will introduce our panelist.
Yes, so tonight we are so lucky to have Dr. Kathy Ocampo. Dr. Ocampo is a licensed psychologist and has experience in clinical work with all ages. She is the director of the ISU Psychology Clinic, which is the training clinic for ISU's clinical psychology doctoral program. She teaches several courses in the doctoral program, including culture and diversity in psychology, supervision and consultation, and she provides clinical supervision for students seeing clients in the clinic. Dr. Ocampo received her BA from the University of California, Irvine, and master's and PhD in clinical psychology from Arizona State University, where she studied ethnic identity issues under Dr. Martha Burnout. Prior to joining the ISU faculty, Dr. Ocampo worked in community mental health at the Hamilton Center for 20 years. During her time at Hamilton Center, she worked as a program manager for the Clay and Sullivan County offices. Dr. Ocampo was also involved in promoting school-based mental health services while participating in several community boards and committees in the county she served. Dr. Ocampo has special interest in developmental psychopathology, journalist training, diversity issues, and community psychology. Dr. Ocampo, if you want to go ahead and get started, we're so excited to see what you have in store for us.
Sure, thanks for having me here tonight. So I am going to quickly share my screen. Let's see. There we go. So we're living in stressful times today, and so I'm here to offer some things we can do to manage our stress. So many people are experiencing increased stress since March 2020, so pretty much exactly a year ago, due to COVID-19 and other stressors in our world. So APA, the American Psychological Association, kind of published some statistics looking at stress in America right now. And what their findings report is that 78% of adults report a COVID-19 stressor. In addition, 67% experienced increased stress, and 84% of people surveyed endorsed at least one emotion associated with prolonged stress. And so that would be anxiety or sadness or anger or other symptom like that. So also, if you look at Google searches over the past year, there have been spikes in terms of searches looking for results or looking for ways to take care of anxiety and ways to manage anxiety. So mental health difficulties have become pretty commonplace in our pandemic. And there are lots of reasons for this. So again, since the pandemic began, we've had a loss of connectedness with other people. Things like peer support haven't been as available. Lots of people have been dealing with loss and bereavement, and often without the ability to be with or be with family and be with loved ones as they were ill or dying. So there's been a loss of social support across the board. And in addition to that, there have been a considerable amount of financial issues and uncertainty that are a direct result of the pandemic. In addition, when we look at all of the different roles that we are in, the pandemic has been it's been a very difficult time to be a parent. So parents are exhibiting stress and are experiencing lots of difficulties as they try and help their kids navigate their education during the pandemic. In addition, parents and others are experiencing various types of stress directly due to the pandemic. So in addition to roles as a parent, people are in roles of sons and daughters. So again, people may have aging parents that they've been concerned about or trying to take care of during this time. Teachers. So all levels of educators have had a difficult time during this pandemic. So I have friends who teach at all different levels, and including the college level, and all are reporting, again, extra stress, lots of extra work, and concern about their students. It's been a difficult time for healthcare providers, having to provide for persons with the illness and those who aren't ill with COVID, but might have other difficulties going on. It's a difficult time to be a frontline worker. In addition, it's a difficult time, again, to be out of work. So we have a lot of people who have been out of work due to changes and limitations due to the pandemic. And it's been a really difficult time for college students and young adults. So there are various things that they have that would have been milestones in their life that they've had to miss out on. So there's lots of reasons why you're feeling overwhelmed. And these feelings are shared by others. So I want everyone to know, again, that they're not alone. So this slide is thanks to Amy Demchek, ISU Employee Wellness, lots of different ways that stress affects our body and our mood and our behavior. So effects of your body, again, as you can see, kind of headaches, pain, fatigue, changes in sex drive, and gastro problems as well. In addition, stress affects your mood. So again, anxiety, restlessness, feeling overwhelmed, lack of motivation or focus, irritability, etc. And stress affects your behavior. So you might notice yourself doing things that maybe you didn't do pre-pandemic, or things that you might have had trouble with pre-pandemic have become worse during the pandemic. So angry outbursts, drug or alcohol misuse, social withdrawal, difficulties or changes in your routine, such as exercising less often. So the antidote to this can be self-care, or as one of my students calls it, do what you want time. So what is self-care? So self-care, again, especially now, it's more than bubble baths and, shopping for pleasure. But it really is looking at all the different things that maybe you can control during this time, things that you can take charge of. It is looking at the things that give you comfort and joy. So this slide just sort of covers lots of different areas of self-care. So self-care includes financial self-care and responsibility. It includes budgeting. It includes having a routine if that's something that is helpful for you. It includes healthy eating, hydration, lots and lots of different variables. So basically, we're responsible for taking care of ourselves. So we're responsible for taking charge of our time and taking charge of things that, that fill us up, that nurture us, that keep us going. So we can't necessarily change the stressors in our life, but we can change some of the things that we do and some of the ways that we respond. So I'm going to cover again kind of all of these different types of self-care. But again, you can kind of take a look at some of those things that are noted in the graphic. So one way to look at self-care, or one thing to think about in terms of self-care, are what are the things that rejuvenate you? What do you enjoy? What is fun? And that's different for every person. So I certainly know the things that are important and that are fun for myself, but that may not be something that's fun for you. So it's really up to each person to sort of look at what those different things might be. So I like this quote from Brene Brown, because right now we live in a society and a culture that rewards work and rewards exhaustion. So how many times, again, have you asked somebody how they're doing and they say, oh, they're doing well, busy as always, or that's your response when somebody asks you how you're doing. And I think we expect that. I think we expect that if somebody is busy, if someone is, working hard and again is exhausted, that somehow that's positive and that's good. And so I would challenge you that maybe that's not the best option for everyone and may not be the best option for you. So it's important to seek joy and to choose joyful activities. And so joy is something that is an emotion that, again, it's a great emotion, but often we live in fear of losing joy. So sometimes people won't do things that give them joy for fear of losing that thing or fear of losing that time. So instead, people are sort of thinking ahead and thinking to the future, or thinking in the past and thinking what they could have done, versus sort of living in the moment and enjoying and appreciating the moment. So joy is different than happiness. So you can feel joy no matter what is going on in your life. It's a matter of moments. And so we have to kind of look for moments and create moments that can give us joy. And the way to do that, again, is to understand yourself and understand what you need. So again, I can know what gives me joy, but that may not be what gives you joy. So again, each person is unique. And so you kind of need to try some things out and try some things on to sometimes see what might work for you. Seeking joy is also not toxic positivity. So in no way would I suggest to somebody that everything is always fine or you're always okay. So it's important to not avoid what you're feeling. Let yourself feel things. Acknowledge your feelings, but also allow yourself to rest, allow yourself to play, and allow yourself enjoyment, even if our culture doesn't always support that. So for example, that may mean taking a break, even though you may not feel like you deserve a break. It may mean going for a walk. even because it's beautiful outside, even if there's something else maybe you could be doing. And I'll talk more about that in a bit. But you have to, it's important again to find the things that you enjoy, find the things that give you strength, that give you balance, and allow yourself the time to do those things. So boundaries are also self-care. So what are boundaries? Boundaries are the wall I put up between myself and you. And sometimes people have super high boundaries that really aren't functional for them. But a lot of times people don't have strong enough boundaries between themselves and other people. So one way to look at boundaries is, how do you spend your time? So when you're at work or at school or doing things, again, there are things that, you know, that take your time. Maybe another person is sort of dictating how you spend your time. But when you're not at work, you get to decide how you spend your time, even if it doesn't feel like you have that opportunity or you have that permission. So time is one of our most precious commodities. So how do we spend our time? How do we spend our energy? So again, something important and something to sort of think about. Who do you spend your time with? This is something that is also your choice. So, and what this means is saying yes to some things and saying no to others. So there might be some opportunities that you have to say no to in order to be able to say yes to other things. And ultimately, we are each responsible for that for ourselves, even if we don't feel like we are. So, for example, I find that I will do mindless things sometimes with my time if I don't pay attention. So if I don't pay attention, I might spend too much time, or I might spend more time on social media than I would choose to if I were cognizant and aware of how much time I was spending on it. Or I might spend too much time or playing a game on my phone or doing something that's distracting, but that doesn't necessarily make me feel better. So it's up to me to keep track of those things and up to me to make other choices. Again, there are times when I want something mindless, when I want something that is just distracting, and that is perfectly fine. But again, we want to be mindful about that for ourselves. So you may love participating on committees at church or extra committees at work or school, or you may like being involved and kind of doing service projects. Wonderful. Keep doing that. However, is there a time when you should say no? Is there a time when someone asks you to be on another subcommittee, and while you could, and while you might do a great job on that subcommittee, should you? So the answer is just up to you. You get to decide if that's something that you spend your time doing or not. Again, it often doesn't feel like we have that choice. And there are some things where we don't have a choice. But I would offer that there are some things we do have a choice in. And so again, boundaries are our ability to say no to certain things, to certain activities, to certain commitments. That allows us to say yes to other things that are going to sort of, you know, feed us, renew us, rejuvenate us. So why should we invest in self-care? Why is this something that's even important? So then I like this cell phone battery analogy. So again, if our phone gets down into the red, what do? We immediately find our charger and we plug it in. because we can't let our phone go dead. But do we do this for ourselves? So when we start to feel ourselves depleted, do we do things to plug ourselves back in and give ourselves energy? Or do we just keep going, risking again, kind of our battery dying? So how often do we find that we push ourselves until our body again kind of exhibits some of the symptoms I listed, telling us that there's something wrong, that we pushed ourselves too far? So again, if we would pay attention to our phone, and if we would be careful and make sure it was full, why wouldn't we do that to ourselves? And why wouldn't we take care of ourselves? And the way to do that is to make time for what's important in your life. So again, only we know what's important for us. Only you know what those things are. And so again, people will ask me kind of what happens if they don't do it? What happens if they don't engage in self-care? Again, the negative health outcomes happen. People get burned out. There might be lots of things that you enjoy doing, but they don't bring you pleasure anymore. So we run the risk of wearing ourselves out. And again, what I'm kind of saying in terms of us looking at this as self-care is that we have choices. We can make decisions about what we do with our time, and we can make decisions about how we plug ourselves back in so that we recharge. And again, everybody is different. So for somebody, recharging might be taking an evening and binging something on Netflix. For somebody else, that might just be distracting. That's not renewing. That doesn't charge their battery. Maybe for that person, they might be more of a social person. And again, our social activities and our social options have been limited during the pandemic. But maybe again, that's a time where you can FaceTime a friend, or you can find another way to connect with people because that's how you recharge. So we need to look and we need to find what are the different things that we can do to recharge. And again, that is personal and that is individual. Often people will give advice on things that people can do because of stress. Sometimes that advice is great, but sometimes that advice is something that works for the other person, but doesn't work for you. That is okay. So again, I challenge everyone to sort of look and find the things that plug yourself back in, that recharge your battery. And so I'll often hear people say that they don't have time. I'd love to do self-care, but I don't have time for it. So what I would say is we aren't in the habit of taking time for it. That's not something we've necessarily been taught. So we need to relearn. We can all relearn. So we can all stop and stop habits that are not good for us and start habits that would be healthy. So we're responsible for prioritizing our time. There are lots of ways to be able to learn to do that. So the first thing is we can't tell ourselves that if we do something for ourselves, or if we do something that prioritizes what we want, that that's selfish. So that's something that we've been taught that isn't necessarily true. So if I choose to spend my time doing X fun thing that I want to do, that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm stealing time from somebody else. I'm stealing time from my family or stealing time from another activity. So I think if we look at our resources as being limited, then yes, if you take time to do something, then you're stealing it or taking it away from another activity. So again, we're all individuals and we all have different things that drain our time. And so again, if we're mindful, what we find is if I have people track their time, if I have people actually look at how much time they're spending during the day on doing things, we all have time that is open, that is perhaps it doesn't necessarily need to be spent doing whatever activity that we're spending it on. So I would say we all do have time that we can use for self-care. It's just a matter of prioritizing it and carving it out. So the other thing is that we need to live and practice these skills all the time. So if I decide to take time out to exercise and I carve that out in my day, then I need to do that every day if that's what's important to me. So because if I do it one day and I feel great, but then I don't do it for another month, then again, that's not really charging my battery. That's not keeping it fully charged. That's operating for most of the time on very limited resources. So there are things that you can do to remind yourself about how to prioritize your time. So one thing that I do is I tend to choose a password for some of my accounts, like my university account, that reminds me every time I log in to prioritize myself. So I will say this last time when I changed my password, I didn't choose a kind of a self-care like password, and I have a hard time remembering my password. Or not a hard time, but it doesn't come as easily as when I would choose something that reminds me to rejuvenate myself. But it's important to step up for yourself. So the way that you step up for other people in your life, for causes that you think are important, you need to do that for yourself as well, because you are as important as any of these other things that you're prioritizing. And ultimately, the person who is most invested in you prioritizing your time and putting yourself first is you. If we wait for other people to give us permission, we're going to be waiting a long time. So we need to give ourselves permission now. And again, reinforce that or support that. Again, step up for ourselves the way we would for our best friend. Because what if your best friend was struggling and couldn't find time to do something important? You would probably problem solve with them and have them find time to do whatever it was that they felt was super important. You can take that role in your life. And so I challenge you again to prioritize yourself in the same way that you easily probably prioritize other people. The other thing is you can find joy in small things, in ordinary moments. So sometimes there might be a moment where nothing is going on, it's not a special day, but for whatever reason, again, you feel calm and secure and serene in that moment. Wonderful. Soak it in, enjoy it. Let yourself feel that versus keeping yourself busy to the point where you don't have time to recognize those moments. And so there is, again, something that Brené Brown talks about, which is white space. White space is something, it is time that is not taken up by something else. So it's time that is not dedicated to any other activity at all. It is really just time to sit with yourself, by yourself. It could be time to reflect, or it could be time to not think at all. I personally have a hard time with white space. I have a hard time not filling my time with lots of things, some things that are fun and some things that are necessary. And so my challenge to myself generally is to allow myself white space. Because when I give myself white space, that's when I learn to appreciate, or that's when I find myself appreciating things in the moment. Because unless I'm still and unless I'm quiet, I don't necessarily notice some of the good things around me. So I don't notice some of the, again, some of the power I have in my life. I don't recognize some of the things that really do give me joy. So you need to give yourself some space. Let yourself take a breath and pause. Those times of pausing are where you're going to find some answers and where you're going to find some time that will recharge your battery. So practicing gratitude is another thing that people do that takes very little time, but that can give people a sense of peace or a sense of purpose to recharge. So practicing gratitude can look like lots of different things. So some people keep a gratitude journal, and before they go to bed, they might write 3 things during the day that they're grateful for. Some people might do that at the beginning of the day and write down things that they're grateful for. So I heard the idea of having a big mug, and at the end of the week, you write down 1 thing in that week that you're grateful for, and then you put it in the mug, and then at the end of the year, you'll take out all of those things that you were grateful for and review it at the end of the year. I think it was once a day or once a week. I don't remember what it was. Anyway, I could not do it. So 6 months later, I realized that I had this mug and there were like 3 scraps of paper in it, because that didn't work for me. I was not able to remember to write down the things I was grateful for. And so again, you have to find what strategy works for you. So for me, what tends to work is to, again, give myself some white space, give myself some time to pause, and use those times to kind of reflect on what's around me and being able to feel grateful, feel gratitude, feel, however you want to phrase it, feel blessed, whatever. But again, find a way that works for you and that works with your time and also how you process information. The other thing is, again, do you have somebody that you can check in with? Is there somebody who can be your person that you go to for support? So who's the person that you call when you're feeling overwhelmed and stressed? And that person will just listen to you, not problem solve, not judge, not, again, tell you all the different things that you should be doing, but will just listen. If there isn't that person in your life, then again, that's something to seek out and perhaps to find. So, because often we get caught up in our own thoughts. We get caught up and we can take ourselves way too seriously. And so having somebody that can be your check and balance, having somebody, multiple somebodies are also great, but again, having somebody that can be your again, anchor somebody that can ground you, I think is also important. So again, it's good to go ahead and find, again, that person, or again, if you have that person in your life, use them for this purpose. Often what I hear from people is that they don't want to be a burden. That person is busy, it's dinner time for their family, they don't have time for me. But what's probably true instead is that they would take time for you. And if you let them be there for you, then they're going to call you when they need that support as well. Because what the message that we're giving by not using that time and not relying on people for support, we're telling those people in our lives, I'm too busy for you, in the same way I think that you're too busy for me. So we miss out on some of the support we could have, again, by valuing being busy and by, again, not asking for the support that we need. And so I want to touch on asking people for things that you need. It is perfectly okay to ask for your needs to be met. No one can read your mind. Nobody knows what you need. Nobody knows what is best for you other than you. Therefore, it is up to you to ask for your needs to be met. So if I need an hour to myself because it's been a busy day and I just need to sit and do whatever, then it's up to me to say, to tell, again, my family, I need an hour. Because they don't know. They can't read my mind. They don't know what's gone on in my day. So again, we need to advocate for ourselves and we need to prioritize ourselves. And self-care and taking time for yourself, taking time for the things that are important to you, that's a habit. So it's going to take a while before that feels normal and that feels natural. So I might feel guilty about taking time. So again, my self-care thing is I like taking walks outside now that it's nice with my dog, and I listen to audiobooks. That is my thing. And when it was really cold and I couldn't do that, I definitely missed it. I tried to replace it with other things, but it just wasn't the same. So I schedule my day around being able to come home, change my shoes, get my dog and go for a walk and listen to an audiobook. But I had to carve out that time, which did mean taking time from something else. But I'm a much better person. I'm a much better parent. I'm a much better spouse when I carve out that time and I do it versus when I don't. Because if I don't, I'm going to be resentful. I'm going to be angry. I'm, again, not necessarily going to be my best self. And even by taking self-care, I may not be my best self, and that's all right. So forgiveness and realizing that you're human is also a super important piece of self-care. So we need to be as kind to ourselves as we are with other people. So again, your best friend makes a mistake, or your child makes a mistake, or your spouse makes a mistake. You can usually find a way to kind of help them see, that it's not that big of a deal. You would certainly, forgive them, etc. But how often do we do that for ourselves? Again, often we take ourselves way too seriously and we don't allow ourselves room for mistakes or room for forgiveness. So part of self-care is acknowledging that we're human and we're going to make human mistakes. So this graphic was made for teens. However, the message applies to everybody. And I really like this analogy for filling your cup. So there are lots of different things that can fill your cup. Lots of different options, and you get to choose, again, what those things are. And as I said before, that they may or may not be the same things that fill up your spouse or your friends, your boss, anything. They're going to be unique to you. And I heard a really good analogy about filling your cup, because what typically happens for people, especially women, because again, women can be caregivers, is as soon as you get a little bit of water in that cup, you are, passing that out to everybody. So you get a little bit of water in your cup and you are watering everybody around you. And what happens is your cup is always empty because you get a little bit of energy, you get a little bit of time, you get a little bit of whatever, and you pass that around and give that to other people. But again, you're always parched. You are always unfilled. So here's a challenge. What happens if when, again, your cup starts getting filled, you let it continue to fill? You don't immediately empty it out and water everything around you. So again, you let it fill, you let it fill, you let it fill. What happens is then your cup is completely full and water spills out, or whatever liquid spills out over the top. So in that case, your cup is full, you feel energized, you feel rejuvenated, relaxed, whatever that is. And again, there's enough of you to go around to everybody else. So again, you let your cup fill up, water spills out the top. There's enough water for you and water for everybody else around you. And again, that's not typically what we're taught. We aren't taught that that's the way to utilize our time, to utilize our talents. So I think we're taught often to give those things away and not taught to be able to use those things to kind of fill ourselves up and let ourselves get full and then share with others. And so again, another slide that has lots of different things that may or may not be things that people that, resonate with each of you for self-care. So mindfulness and relaxation are things that people can do for self-care. So, and these are things that can be personalized. So again, what is relaxing for one person, not relaxing for somebody else. So I'm an extrovert. It is relaxing for me to go out with friends, go to dinner, go to a musical, do something else after that, and come home and be really tired. I love that. That's relaxing to me. That same activity would stress my husband out completely. So that's not how he relaxes. That is not what rejuvenates him. And so again, you need to find what works for yourself. There are also lots of phone apps. There are YouTube links, books, etc., that will give you information on how to do meditation or how to do relaxation or mindfulness. Lots and lots of information out there that's really useful. And so I encourage you all to look at those things. And sometimes, again, it can just be 2 minutes to, take some deep breaths. So sometimes just, kind of deep belly breaths are really what you need to be able to kind of center yourself and be ready to kind of move on and accomplish or kind of do whatever it is that you need to do. but how often do we give ourselves the, minute it takes to just take some deep breaths? So as you look at self-care and as you look at fitting things in, it doesn't have to be, 60 minutes of exercise every day that you're committing to. It can be take a minute and take 3 deep breaths. So that's where you can start. And so what I want to do is kind of go through a grounding exercise. And so with this grounding exercise, it is going to go through several different things that are different types of grounding. And grounding is a way to, if you're in your head and you're feeling overwhelmed, grounding is a way to just sort of get yourself out of your head and help you refocus. So these are things that you can do if you are at home. These are things that you can do if you are honestly driving. These are things that you can do if you're in a meeting and feeling overwhelmed. So there are lots of different pieces and lots of different types of grounding that can work any place that you are. And so that's a nice thing about grounding. And so I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to cover mental grounding, physical grounding, and soothing grounding. And so this will take about 15 minutes. And again, I just want you all to get a chance to sort of experience it and sort of see if any of these things resonate with you, see if any of these things are helpful. So what I want you to do is to kind of rate how you're feeling right now. So kind of rate what your, kind of what your mood is, what your negative feelings might be. So on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being the worst and 10 being the best, again, you're going to rate kind of how you feel right now. You don't need to tell anybody, but again, I just want you to keep that number in your head. And so again, with grounding, the goal is to turn your attention to the outside world, to shift away from the inner world of negative feelings, so you can detach and distance from emotional pain. If you notice yourself focusing on negative feelings, try to let them go, like leaves in a fall breeze. Turn away from them, focusing your attention even stronger on the outside world. You may want to think of this as changing the channel like a television, where you can change the channel to get a different show. So I want you to keep your eyes open and look around the room as much as you like. Remember, you are always in control. And try not to judge anything, just notice what is. I will give you grounding instructions for about, again, 10-15 minutes. And again, we're going to try mental grounding, physical grounding, and soothing grounding to see which types work best for you. I'll be asking a couple questions, and again, you'll just answer that question in your head. So I want you to remind yourself that you're safe, you're in whatever setting that you're in, and again, you are in a place that is safe for you. So now let's try to imagine putting a buffer between you and all of your negative feelings. Imagine that your negative feelings are bundled up and put in a container. Next, think of something you can put between you and that container of negative feelings. Perhaps it's a wall, a suit of armor, or a big open field in the country. Anything that creates safe distance between you and your negative feelings. So go ahead and imagine that. So negative feelings in a container, and there's a buffer between that container in you. Now I want you to focus on the room that you're in. Look around the room. So go ahead and name as many colors as you can. Good. Now name as many objects as you can. How many chairs are there in the room you're in? Are there curtains? How many windows? If you have a window and you want to look outside, what is the weather outside? Are there paintings or posters in the room that you're in? If so, you can choose to look at one and describe it, not judging it, but just describing everything about it. Colors, the shapes, etc. What color is the carpet? Or what color is the floor? How many doors are there in the room? How many lamps or lights? What color is the paint on the walls? Do you see any words written in the room on a poster, or it could be a book or a sign or something? If there is a word, again, read each letter backwards. Again, what you're doing is you are focusing on that word, and again, going ahead and saying each letter and kind of reading it backwards. Kind of as you're seeing the letters for the first time. Now we're going to try naming some facts. So I want you to think of the names of cities. So think of as many cities as you can. Great. Now try naming sports teams. So name all the sports teams you can think of. Now think of TV shows or movies. In your head, name as many of them as you can think of. Okay, now I want you to take the number 100 and subtract 5 from that and notice the new number. Now subtract 5 again and notice the new number. Again, it's not about focusing on the math, but just focusing again on the new number. So all of that was mental grounding. So kind of taking your thoughts and kind of, focusing on something else. So now we're going to try some physical grounding. So I want you to put your feet flat on the floor and notice your feet on the floor. They're literally grounded, connected to the floor. So wiggle your toes inside your shoes. Dig your heels gently into the floor to ground yourself even more. Now touch your chair. And again, think anything you can about it. So what material is it made of? So is the seat hard or soft? Now touch the table or desk in front of you, if there's a table. What is it made of? Is the material warmer or colder than the chair? Now pick up an object that's near you. Could be a pen, could be your keys. Anything that's near you. Pick it up and hold it. Feel it. And say everything you can about it. What is it made of? How heavy is it? Is it warm or cold? What color is it? So go ahead and put the object down. And I want you to clench your fists. And notice the tension in your hands as you do that. Now release your fists. So now I want you to take your palms and push them together in front of you and push as hard as you can. And then let it go. So now I want you to grab onto your chair and grab as tightly as you can. After a few moments, you'll let it go. And now I want you to roll your head around in a circle and then go the opposite way. Good. And so now we're going to try some soothing grounding. So let's start with favorites. So think about your favorite color. What color is it? Think about your favorite animal. What animal is it? What is a movie that you saw recently that you really enjoyed? What is your favorite season of the year? Think about your favorite time of day. What time is that? Think of a favorite person. Somebody you're close to, somebody you admire. Picture that person. Think of a favorite upbeat song. So I want you to kind of get it, think about a song, hold it in your mind, and kind of sing it to yourself. So some people have a theme song, have a song that they kind of know that if they think about it, will help lift them up, help relax them or rejuvenate them. So now try to think of a safe place. So still keeping your eyes open, think of a place that's safe, soothing, and calming for you. It could be the beach, it could be the mountains, it could be a walk in your favorite city, maybe a park, or a favorite room in your house. So just kind of think about that place. I want you kind of to imagine yourself in that place. So notice everything you love about it. So I want you to notice the colors, the textures, the sounds, maybe the smells. So again, if you are at the beach, there could be the smell of the ocean. So again, I want you to use all your senses and sort of imagine yourself in that place. And I want you to feel the safety and calm of that place. So good. And so that was soothing grounding. So now what I want you to do is kind of think about what your mood feels like now, again, on a scale of 1 to 10. So again, has your mood changed after doing the different grounding exercises? And again, those are things that are all really brief, really simple things that can make a huge difference in terms of helping you cope and deal with whatever it is that's going on kind of in your day. So as I said, one thing I do for self-care is I walk outside with my dog. And so here's a picture of me on one of my walks on a nice day. Again, that habit didn't start right away. It took a long time for it to become habit. But now, honestly, if there's a day when I don't walk, I notice it. Not just because of the exercise, but because that is my time to reset, to, again, transition to, again, it's just time for me. So again, self-care, again, is self-preservation. So it's beyond just sort of nurturing and soothing, but really it is what helps us thrive versus just survive. And so I'll leave you with one last little slide. Again, we need to be intentional. So we really do have more control and more say so over our time than I think we're usually led to believe, or we're taught to believe. So again, we get to choose some things, or we get to pick some things in our day that can help recharge our batteries and fill us up. Because that's the one thing, again, that we do have control of, given different stressors in our life. And that's the end of my presentation. So again, any questions can go ahead, and I will turn this over to our facilitators.
All right, hello. Thank you for the presentation. At this time, we're going to be taking a 5-minute intermission. During the break, a pop-up window is going to appear on your screen, and it's going to ask for some basic information from the audience. Please complete this poll and make sure that you hit submit so that we get the information. We're going to be using this information to help make the mini medical school lecture series better in the future. Thank you. So let's plan to be back here at 7:38.
Okay, let's go ahead and resume the session and jump into some Q&As. Everyone, please feel free to continue submitting questions using the Q&A button at the bottom. The questions that you submit are only for the panelists and the host to see, so other attendees won't be able to see your questions. All right, so Dr. Ocampo, you talked a lot about the importance of self-care and refilling your cup. Can you talk about symptoms that people might see or sort of like byproducts that people might experience for, you know, skipping self-care time and time again, just chronic burnout? Like, what would that look like in someone? How would we be able to recognize that?
So typically, again, it looks like, again, people get irritable. People might start snapping, at loved ones, snapping at other people, not enjoying the things that they used to enjoy. So they might maybe enjoyed things about work. And suddenly, again, when they're at work, they're burnt out and they don't really care about whatever work it is that they're doing, even though in the past they found that enjoyable. Resentment, I think, is another thing that I see. So people become resentful of loved ones and the people who are relying on them. So, but it's because they are spending all of their energy, again, kind of watering those people around them and not, leaving some in there for themselves or letting their cup kind of fill up. And so again, they can feel resentful of those people that they're taking care of. And again, often people don't do it on purpose, but don't realize that they also have the ability and the power to take care of themselves as well. They're also responsible for that. So for some people, again, it can look like depression or it can look like anxiety. So it can be restlessness, sleep problems. It could be overeating. It could be undereating. So it could be headaches. It could be other body aches. And there are lots of illnesses that are exacerbated by stress. So again, if somebody has a predisposition for a particular illness, again, those symptoms might get worse.
Thank you. And sort of to follow up, how could we approach sharing this information and the importance of self-care and the steps that we can take to sort of achieve that to maybe a friend, a peer, a colleague that we see that really is burning the candle from both ends and can really use that information without coming across as, being too critical or even superior?
So I find the best thing that you can do is live it. So if you are taking care of yourself, then they'll often see that you aren't stressed about whatever thing it is, or you are managing your emotions maybe in a way that they would like to. And so again, if you're living it, then they may come to you and sort of ask kind of what's working for you. How are you able to handle the stress of school or whatever? And so one thing I tell my students is that unless you are actually living and doing self-care, we can't really talk about this with our clients. We can't teach it because they're going to see right through us. So if you are telling somebody to do something that you don't do yourself, they're not going to believe you. And I think that's when we come across as preaching or judging, again, when we are, again, because it's coming from a place of knowledge, but not necessarily coming from a place of caring as much. Because honestly, if we believed it, we would be doing it ourselves.
Absolutely. I love that response. And finally, this is sort of a just a psychology question, and I personally am curious to see what you think. But as you mentioned in the very beginning of your presentation, mental health struggles have been really high and very prevalent during the pandemic. What do you think the impact might be of, the serious, like, honestly, it's almost like a mental health epidemic of its own. What do you think might come of that in the following years? Do you think that might like destigmatize mental health and we might have more progress on that front? Do you think it will change the game at all? Do you have any sort of projections or predictions on what you think mental health and the approach to mental health might look like in the years to come following COVID?
So one thing that we know about stressors is that when something is a community stressor, like a pandemic, like a flood, some sort of natural disaster, again, so everyone in the community can kind of understand what the other person's going through. So it's not an isolated stressor like some other things might be. And so I think we as a world, I think this is one thing that has affected everybody. And so we all share an understanding of some of the stressors. Again, some people it's affected much, much more than others, but I think there's an empathy in terms of looking at the effects of COVID that people have that are different than other stressors. And so I do think that that people are talking about mental health care more. I do think that people are seeing the importance of mental health services and what happens when mental health is neglected, I think more now maybe than in the past. So I do think that what will come out of the pandemic is valuing mental health, our own mental health, kind of valuing, again, the need to sort of charge our batteries, and perhaps less blaming other people, stigma, kind of that belief that, you need to just pull yourself up by your bootstraps. So because again, there is sort of a sense of we're all kind of in this together, I think. And so I hope, again, the outcome will be mental health is more something that is seen as important, valued, less stigma, and again, more funding would be great. But mental health is physical health. Really, there aren't two different things. It really is the same thing. And so, and I think that's one thing that the pandemic has sort of brought out in the open more.
Thank you, Dr. Ocampo. This is going to be the last call for any questions. If you have any, please submit now. I'll give about maybe 5 more seconds just in case someone's typing. All right. So we're going to go ahead and conclude tonight's mini medical school. Thank you again, Dr. Ocampo, for taking time out of your night to share your wisdom with us. It was incredible, such a great presentation and so relevant to all of us living in this pandemic world. And thank you to our attendees for joining and taking this knowledge and hopefully sharing with others. We hope we'll see you again at another mini medical school session. They'll be every Tuesday in March and April, 6:30 to 8:30 via Zoom. The next topic next week is going to be on urology. And finally, before we end the meeting, if you haven't yet done so, please complete the pop-up survey that's on your screen. That feedback is anonymous and it's, like Brett said earlier, used to plan future mini medical school sessions. So thank you again, everyone, and I hope you all have a restful, wonderful night.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Dr. Ocampo. And students, I appreciate you guys volunteering. Everyone have a good evening.
Thanks, Christy. Bye, everyone.
Good night.
Night.
Let's go ahead and resume the session and jump into some Q&As. Everyone, please feel free to continue submitting questions using the Q&A button at the bottom. The questions that you submit are only for the panelists and the host to see, so other attendees won't be able to see your questions. All right, so Dr. Ocampo, you talked a lot about the importance of self-care and refilling your cup. Can you talk about symptoms that people might see, or sort of like byproducts that people might experience for, you know, skipping self-care time and time again, just chronic burnout? Like, what would that look like in someone? How would we be able to recognize that?
So typically, again, it looks like, again, people get irritable. People might start snapping, at loved ones, snapping at other people, not enjoying the things that they used to enjoy. So they might maybe enjoyed things about work, and suddenly, again, when they're at work, they're burnt out and they don't really care about whatever work it is that they're doing, even though in the past they found that enjoyable. Resentment, I think, is another thing that I see. So people become resentful of loved ones and the people who are relying on them. So, but it's because they are spending all of their energy, again, kind of watering those people around them and not, leaving some in there for themselves, or letting their cup kind of fill up. And so again, they can feel resentful of those people that they're taking care of. And again, often people don't do it on purpose, but don't realize that they also have the ability and the power to take care of themselves as well. They're also responsible for that. So for some people, again, it can look like depression, or it can look like anxiety. So it can be restlessness, sleep problems. It could be overeating. It could be undereating. So it could be headaches. It could be other body aches. And there are lots of illnesses that are exacerbated by stress. So again, if somebody has a predisposition for a particular illness, again, those symptoms might get worse.
Thank you. And sort of to follow up, how could we approach sharing this information and the importance of self-care and the steps that we can take to sort of achieve that to maybe a friend, a peer, a colleague that we see that really is burning the candle from both ends and can really use that information without coming across as, being too critical or even superior?
So I find the best thing that you can do is live it. So if you are taking care of yourself, then they'll often see that you aren't stressed about whatever thing it is, or you are managing your emotions maybe in a way that they would like to. And so again, if you're living it, then they may come to you and sort of ask kind of what's working for you. How are you able to handle the stress of school or whatever? And so one thing I tell my students is that unless you are actually living and doing self-care, we can't really talk about this with our clients. We can't teach it because they're going to see right through us. So if you are telling somebody to do something that you don't do yourself, they're not going to believe you. And I think that's when we come across as preaching or judging, again, when we are, again, because it's coming from a place of knowledge, but not necessarily coming from a place of caring as much. Because honestly, if we believed it, we would be doing it ourselves.
Absolutely. I love that response. And finally, this is sort of a just a psychology question, and I personally am curious to see what you think. But as you mentioned in the very beginning of your presentation, mental health struggles have been really high and very prevalent during the pandemic. What do you think the impact might be of, you know, the serious, like, honestly, it's almost like a mental health epidemic of its own. What do you think might come of that in the following years? Do you think that might like destigmatize mental health and we might have more progress on that front? Do you think it will change the game at all? Do you have any sort of projections or predictions on what you think mental health and the approach to mental health might look like in the years to come following COVID?
So one thing that we know about stressors is that when something is a community stressor, like a pandemic, like a flood, some sort of natural disaster, again, so everyone in the community can kind of understand what the other person's going through. So it's not an isolated stressor like some other things might be. And so I think we as a world, I think this is one thing that has affected everybody. And so we all share an understanding of some of the stressors. Again, some people it's affected much more than others, but I think there's an empathy in terms of looking at the effects of COVID that people have that are different than other stressors. And so I do think that that people are talking about mental health care more. I do think that people are seeing the importance of mental health services and what happens when mental health is neglected, I think more now maybe than in the past. So I do think that what will come out of the pandemic is valuing mental health, our own mental health, kind of valuing, again, the need to sort of charge our batteries, and perhaps less blaming other people, stigma, kind of that belief that, you just pull yourself up by your bootstraps. So because again, there is sort of a sense of we're all kind of in this together, I think. And so I hope, again, the outcome will be mental health is more something that is seen as important, valued, less stigma, and again, more funding would be great. But mental health is physical health. Really, there aren't two different things. It really is the same thing. And so, and I think that's one thing that the pandemic has sort of brought out in the open more.
Thank you, Dr. Ocampo. This is going to be the last call for any questions. If you have any, please submit now. I'll give about maybe 5 more seconds just in case someone's typing. All right. So we're going to go ahead and conclude tonight's mini medical school. Thank you again, Dr. Ocampo, for taking time out of your night to share your wisdom with us. It was incredible, such a great presentation and so relevant to all of us living in this pandemic world. And thank you to our attendees for joining and taking this knowledge and hopefully sharing with others. We hope we'll see you again at another mini medical school session. They'll be every Tuesday in March and April, 6:30 to 8:30 via Zoom. The next topic next week is going to be on urology. And finally, before we end the meeting, if you haven't yet done so, please complete the pop-up survey that's on your screen. That feedback is anonymous, and it's, like Brett said earlier, used to plan future mini medical school sessions. So thank you again, everyone, and I hope you all have a restful, wonderful night.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Dr. Ocampo. And students, I appreciate you guys volunteering. Everyone have a good evening.
Thanks, Christy. Bye, everyone.
Good night.
Night.